The Adelaide Crows are on a roll, having won their last 2 matches, including last week's away game against Richmond. Sam Jacobs' terrible marking attempt with just 30 seconds to go led to an after-the-siren goal that put the margin at a bet-crushing 36 points. This week's match sees the Crows take on the undefeated Sydney Swans at Adelaide Oval in what's easily match of the round, doubly so thanks to the return of massive dickhead Kurt Tippett. The first bounce is at 7:10pm local time. I'm your host Scorpus, and this is the Crowcast Preview. Alright, good to be back, and with me tonight on the cast are 2 returning members from the first cast that we did, Mr. Mystery Guest and Phoenix. How are you guys going tonight?
Pretty good, mate. How you doing?
Very well, thanks, Scorpus.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I managed to do pretty well in the tipping last week, so I'm happy off the back of some good results. Alright, let's get straight into the teams for this round. We've made just one change, coming in Tom Lynch, who was, of course, a late admission last week. He had a baby girl, I believe, so congratulations to Tom Lynch. Coming out of the team for Lynch is Riley Knight. For Sydney, they've made 2 changes, coming in Jared McVeigh, their co-captain, as well as Dean Towers, and going out George Hewitt and Zach Jones. These teams aren't particularly at full strength. There's a couple of missing players. We've still got Brad Crouch out, as well as, I guess, Cameron missing, pretty unlucky after being best on ground in the SANFL. And Sydney's still missing guys like Sam Reid, Gary Rowan, and Michael Talia. Just as a refresher from the last match that we played, which was round 18, 2015, this was the Please Don't Boo Adam Goods match at the SCG. I think he had he missed a game for personal reasons just the round before, and he came back, and yeah, we kind of got a bit smashed there. We got beaten by 52 points. Franklin had 3 goals, Tippett 3 goals, and their midfield combo of Parker, Kennedy and Hanbury combined for 7 goals as well. Hanbury, 40 touches, he was damaging. They had 5 players more than 30 touches. Yeah, it was just a pretty dark day for us. Best on ground was Dangerfield, and we had our 4 main forwards kick 8 of our 9 goals. So, Phoenix, what do you think of Riley Knight missing for Tom Lynch?
Yeah, it was a predictable one, wasn't it, I guess? I probably had in my mind that it was out of him and the Rat as to who dropped out this week. But I'm quite happy that Rat stayed in. He's obviously doing a role, but he'd probably want to pick up his disposal count this week. Riley Knight's obviously unlucky, but he's clearly not far away.
Yeah, I think that Knight and Atkins were the 2 guys that were on the chopping block. Knight was just probably a bit unlucky as the kind of 24th guy into the team. He would be the first one out. Atkins had he led the team in pressure acts with 22, but his 9 disposals and 3 tackles probably not enough. Mr. Mystery Guest, do you see Cameron? How do you see him being pretty unlucky to come out or not make it? Sorry.
Yeah. So it was a bit weird because he did say in an article during the week that he still thought that he wasn't quite up to AFL standard of fitness, and that he was only just sort of starting to run over the ground better. So I wonder if him not feeling up to it yet had much thought into, like, the coaches took that into the selection.
Yeah, I think that definitely had something to do with it. I mean, the only change I could have seen happening was Atkins out and Cameron in, and if he says he's not fit enough, then he's probably got a message from the coaches somewhere that, you know, his fitness is not quite ready yet, and he needs to be a little bit more diligent, I guess, in getting up to match fitness before he can come into the team. That said, he has been out for, I think, 4 weeks now in the SANFL, and this is the first time that he really stood up and kicked 4 goals. So hopefully we'll see him pretty soon. Ryan B from the chat is asking, how close is Ricky Henderson? I think he had another pretty tidy game on the weekend in the SANFL. And, I mean, he hasn't been listed in the emergencies of Van Berlo, Cameron, and Ellis Yeoman. So I guess he's still a little bit behind those guys at the moment. Phoenix, do you see Hendo coming back in anytime soon?
I reckon he's the obvious replacement for a DMAC type on a wing. I don't like him down back. He makes me nervous with his defensive efforts, but he's obviously got a great kick. He's reasonable in the air and he's got good leg speed. So aside from a wing, though, or maybe a high half forward, I don't see where we could slot him in at this stage.
Yeah, it's really tough. And McKay, I mean, a lot of people criticise him on the board all the time, whipping boy status, all that stuff. But he's been, over the first 3 rounds, he's top 10 for our disposals, uncontested possession, clearances and tackles. And he's jointly leading our inside 50 count with, I believe, Tomo. So, yeah, second for meters, average meters gained as well. So he's actually performing reasonably well, and I think a little bit higher than the standard we've seen from McKay in past seasons. So, yeah, I think, like you said, Hendo's fighting for a spot against McKay, and he's standing out at the moment. So, yeah, kind of interesting there. So we know Sydney has just really 2 tall forwards at the moment in Franklin and Tippett, but a lot of medium forwards at the moment, a lot of midfielders that can come through and kick goals. Mr. Mystery Guest, do you think that's going to be a big problem for us on the weekend?
That's a really good question. So I was a little bit concerned last week about how damaging some of our clearances were. So I think so many of our scores came from turnovers, and we weren't getting a lot from sort of stoppages, which I'm pretty sure in previous seasons that's been one of our really strong areas. So I think it's you can't really try and stop all of them. So I think we have to, our inside mids really have to take it up to them and make sure that the opposition guys are forced to be defensive on us as well, so they're not left unaccountable.
Yeah, I mean, I think our well-known forward line power will really make them think about how they're going to try and defend against us. Bacon8 asks in the chat, should Seedsman not pass his concussion test, who would we bring in from the emergency list? Of course, Seedsman was concussed in the 4th quarter last week. It seems pretty likely that he will be available for this match. But of the emergencies, like I mentioned earlier, we've just got Van Berlo, Cameron, and Ellis Yeoman. 2 of those guys are probably more your slower midfielder types. So I reckon probably Cameron would come in, I guess, after being best on ground. But like we said earlier, he's not quite match fit according to his own assessment. What do you think, Phoenix, about that? Has he muted himself? I'm not sure what's going on there, but we'll just keep going. So, of course, one of the big talking points about this game is the return of massive dickhead Kurt Tippett. This is the first time that we've managed to play against Sydney with Tippett in the team at home since he left in, of course, those extremely terrible circumstances a couple of seasons ago. Mr. Mystery Guest, how much will you be booing Kurt Tippett on the weekend?
I've been waiting so long. It takes a little bit away from it because we've been waiting that long, so it's not fresh in our minds still, I guess, though. But I'm expecting, I don't think I'll a big booer, but I think I'll enjoy sitting back and listening to some of the comments from the crowd.
I'm a booer, but I'm actually a bit concerned about Tippett, and sorry about that earlier. I outsmarted myself there for a second. Just on your earlier question, Scorpus, I'm suspicious about VB's inclusion on the emergency list. I think if Seed doesn't come up, their thinking is that off half back, VB's the one, which is disappointing.
No, don't say that. I mean, come on.
Why else would they put him on there?
But he's just so terrible. Oh, no, we can't even think of it. It's so bad.
The views of this particular podcaster do not reflect those of the Adelaide Football Club, but I wouldn't have him in. I'd probably, if it were me, I'd actually bring in Ellis Yeoman because I think inside midfield strength is going to be important this week. But why else would they put VB on the list if not to replace the Seed if he doesn't come up?
Yeah, I think he made the emergency list last week, though, so I'm not sure. I'm just really fingers crossed that we don't see VB on the field against Sydney, and like you said, Cameron or Ellis Yeoman for that bigger body. That would probably be a bit better there. But yeah, I think just back on Kurt Tippett a little bit. In the last game, like I mentioned earlier, he kicked 3 goals against us, and he's a pretty damaging player, unfortunately, and he's been playing a bit more in the ruck as well. So, Phoenix, do you reckon that he's gonna, tear us a new one again, or will the boos really get to him?
Oh, I don't think the boos will get to him. He's a bit of a narcissist, but well, he seems to be anyway.
I think it's confirmed that he is.
Yeah, but where I'm worried about Kurt's impact is around the grounds. Sammy's going to have his work cut out because Kurt's obviously very strong in the air, and I think we might see Kurt really try to impose himself around the ground while he's on the ball. So that's going to be a big test for Sammy this week.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He's going to be an issue for up forward, around the ground, in the ruck. Hopefully we can really curb his influence and make him feel the pain of leaving Adelaide in such bad circumstances all those seasons ago. Right, moving on to the game in a little bit more detail. We haven't actually beaten Sydney since round 6 2012, where we won at the SCG by 5 points. So this was quite some time ago. Across the past 5 matches, we have lost by 55, 63, 77 and 29 points, as well as that 5-point win. And over the past 10 matches, we have an average margin of minus 19 points against them. So we're losing on average, although 5 wins, 5 losses over that period. And when we do lose, we tend to lose by quite a lot. So Sydney's been a bit of our bogey team, and we're coming up against a really strong midfield. Mystery guess, how you see the midfield battle shaping up?
Yeah, well, that's always talked up as the key part. So it's hard to see us sort of win the inside battle, but if we can break even, you would think that we could beat them on the outside. So I think we probably need a source to lift. Has been in so-so form so far. So I think we need a big performance out of him. If our mids get first use, I think we can really push them.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of outside quality at the moment with guys like Smith, Seedsman, McKay. I mean, he's in the list at the moment. Malira, McGovern, Lynch, Laird and Atkins will all be rotating through those, delivery, lots of meters gained roles. Phoenix, our outside players, do you reckon that that's going to be our real strength this week?
Well, on the surface, you'd think so. I was just doing the little check-up of the comparative stats, thanks to FootyWire, and some interesting reading there. They actually outnumber us in uncontested possession at the moment, which seems to suggest they don't mind throwing it around on the outside. They also seem to rely heavily on marks inside 50, far more than we do. Amazing stat from our game last week. We only had 4 marks inside 50 for the match, which was incredible. So I think where their midfield dominance is going to hurt us the most is if their forward half get on top in the air. If we can break even in the middle and keep their marking forwards quiet, and then obviously our trademark rebound, I think that's where we win or lose the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good analysis there. I think we don't necessarily require marks inside 50 to win, but like you said, if we can really curb that down on their end, and especially stop all those really damaging mids of theirs from sliding into the forward line and kicking bags like they've done in the past, I think we'll really have that advantage over them to sort of do what we've been doing in the past couple of weeks and forcing turnovers on our defensive 50 line and slingshotting it over their defense, because I can't really see too many players in their team at the moment, at least, that really have the speed and kicking skills that some of our guys like Smith and Seedsman have. And I think if we can get it to those guys in particular, like we've been doing in the past, that we'll have a real chance up against, we've got our full forward line back this week. We're almost playing 4 talls with, McGovern, Lynch, Jenkins and Walker all in there. So yeah, I think that'll be quite interesting. And as Bacon8 says in the chat, yeah, hopefully we get some inside goss from Michael Talia like last week. Last year. He's unfortunately not playing, but yeah, maybe he'll give us some ideas of which mids will be rotating to the forward line. That would be quite handy. So, what are we going to do to stop Dan Hanbury, Mr. Mystery Guest? He has had, from 2 of the last 3 matches, he has had 40-plus disposals. Who do we put to him, or how do we stop his influence?
Van Berlo. Nah,
Get off.
Good question. I often think that Hanbury's a little bit similar to Sloane in that, except I think Hanbury probably wins more ball, but they're both play wing, but they're both players who are strong in the contest. Not exactly like for like, but I think they have similarities. Not sure I'd play them directly on each other, but I can see that as like part of the rotation, maybe Douglas as well. And again, sort of making Hanbury accountable for them as well.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think, Phoenix?
Yeah, I reckon Dougie's probably the one. And I think you hit on a really good point there, MMG. I think we're going to have to really try and make their midfield accountable, especially on transition. If we can get them working the other way as much as possible, that might quell their influence and get them to just not press up as high, because what they do tend to do, Sydney, is if they don't take a mark up forward, they tend to work really hard to keep it in their forward 50. So our ability to clear those stoppages and dispute a contest across half-back and use our run I think it's going to be pivotal. Yeah, Hanbury, Jared McVeigh's a good in for them this week as well. Bit of experience there, but Hanbury's obviously the danger man. They got Lukey Parker as well. And Tommy Mitchell's been in good nick as well. So they've got some guns in the midfield.
Oh, yeah, they certainly do. And yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting match from looking at the opponents as well that both Adelaide and Sydney have faced in the last couple of weeks. Of course, Sydney has faced Carlton and GWS recently, while we've faced Richmond, North Melbourne and Port Adelaide, who a lot of people were expecting to be up there. I'm not sure Richmond or Port Adelaide have quite hit the expectations that many had of them of the preseason, but I think we've notably played much stronger opposition than Sydney has over the opening rounds. And it'll be really interesting to see whether, Sydney's been smashing teams, whether they'll be able to, get on top of us in a similar fashion that they've been able to get on top of Carlton and more recently GWS. I think that, yeah, it'll be difficult for them. We're a much tougher competition, and I think we have a real chance to really knock them off from their undefeated position at the moment, hopefully. Right,
I see, sorry, Scorpus, I see Sydney as a classier version of North Melbourne in many ways. Good midfield depth, an unheralded but solid defence, and some tall timber up forward. And I think structurally we're better now in terms of our personnel. I think Hardigan has made our defence look far better and freed up Jakey Lever to patrol the snake pit in the hole. If we can get on top of there or break even, as I said before, in the midfield and stop their forward dominance, then away we go.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on now to one of our sections from last week that I'm just bringing back because I think that the Spud Watch has proven itself once again to be on the money. So like I mentioned last week, we have a little bit of a tendency to get cut up by Spud or lesser known players from the opposition. Just as a quick recap, in round 1, Van Berlo got burnt off by Michael Ferrito. In round 2, we had Aaron Young kicking 4 goals against us. And in round 3, we had Sean Hampson getting more hit-outs than Sam Jacobs, which I think was a little bit of a travesty considering the golfing quality between those two players. But anyway, which Spud player or lesser-known player from the Sydney Swans do you reckon will carve us up this week, Mr. Mystery Guest? I've just aligned some guys I think probably might not be in the radar of some of our listeners. We've got Tom Papley, who's a 176 centimetre small forward. We've got Dean Towers, a 189 centimetre medium forward. Dan Robinson, who's a mid-sized midfielder. And also, of course, traitor Kurt Tippett. Who do you think will be cutting us up this week?
If we're going, we'll say Dean Towers. He's that awkward sort of size that seems to always trouble us.
Yeah, what do you think, Phoenix?
Mid-sized forward.
I was actually going to say the same thing. We always seem to get some bloke that bobs up and kicks three, so he'd be my pick as well, actually.
Yeah, and he's coming back into the team as well, so I think he might want to play a little bit, play quite well so he can cement his spot for the next week. But I agree, I think that awkward medium forward Dean Towers will trouble us this week. So I guess we're coming to sort of the end of our little preview of the Sydney game. There's just a few other points that I think are worth mentioning. We've got Tomo's 250th game for the Adelaide Crows. I think he's up to over 280 games at the moment overall, but 250 for us is a huge milestone after he was traded, so many years ago. How important has Tomo been for us, Phoenix?
He's been a beast this year. I have to say I was on the side of him maybe reducing his midfield time, but by all reports he cut it up during pre-season and he's been an inside beast. So, and I reckon he's a bit more than 380 because 280 because I reckon he hits 300 this season later on.
Yeah,
288.
Yeah, that'd be about right. High 280s, but yeah, wow, he's been phenomenal for us, and no signs of him slowing down at all, at least for the time being. Hopefully, he might be able to play on next season. And also, just a little interesting thing I noted that Mitch McGovern, he seems to have got a haircut. Now, normally I wouldn't bother mentioning something as trivial as getting a haircut, but as we know in the AFL, getting a haircut equates to a bad performance. So hopefully Mitch McGovern doesn't fall to that trap and he can turn on and kick a couple of goals for us this week. All right. So
have you got the stats on that, Scorpus? Is there a table or some sort of chart that we can reference?
Look, I'm not sure that there's quite a table of who gets haircuts when. I'm not sure whether Champion Data would bother sort of tabling those haircut figures, but I think we've seen a couple of times guys like Cameron and Betts getting haircuts and not kicking goals next week. Just a little bit of a...
I'm with you. I want to track down. We need to email Champion Data and say, get on it. You're missing out.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that hard to follow when people are getting haircuts. It's pretty noticeable. It's something that they should really add in next season, I reckon. So, who do we think is going to win this match and the margin, and who's going to be best on ground? We'll start with you, Mr. Mystery Guest.
I would just say us, just to rub it into Sydney. So we'll say 15 points. Best on ground, Rory Sloane.
What about you, Phoenix?
Well, I'm sorry, but on the back of our inability to beat the Kangaroos and just stepping up a little bit in class, and I think we have improved as well since round one, but I think Sydney are going to be too strong for us at this early stage of our development path with this new structure. So I reckon Sydney by about 4 goals, unfortunately, and I reckon Buddy's going to get us.
Boo. Nah, those boos we can reserve for Kurt Tippett. I'm going against you, Phoenix. I think we finally have the team, or at least finally over the past couple of years, we finally have the team that will be able to take it to Sydney, and I think we'll just scrape in a win by 4 or 5 points. I think it'll be a really, really close match. I hope the boos will get to Kurt Tippett and he'll put on a shocker of a performance. And I think the best on ground will still be Dan Hanbury for the Sydney Swans. I think he'll be BOG in a losing team, at least hopefully. Right.
I've actually got money on Hanbury for the Brownlow. I reckon he's a dead set gun.
Yeah, he's really good. I mean, but Parker's stepped up as well this year. It's just crazy how much midfield depth Sydney has, and they keep being able to pull guns out of the draft. Like, they're playing, first round pick. What was his name? Callum Mills. He's going to be a gun for them too.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable how many good guys they have in their team. All right, so how do we guys go on our tips for last week? I think it was not as hard as some of the previous rounds, but where are we all sitting in terms of the tipping, Mr. Mystery Guest?
I've just stopped checking mine. I'm about to give up. I'm going shocking this year.
You're on 16, MMG, which is only
16.
one below me. I'm on 17.
It's not too bad. I mean, we had Hank on the podcast last week, and I think he's doing awfully in terms of his tipping. Let me just take a look at the charts. Yeah, he's on, if I can find him.
Yeah, he's on 15.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's even worse than
I'm
you
just
guys.
thinking you're just rubbing this in because I know you're sitting on 20.
Well, you might have caught me out a little bit there. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
This is a beat up. This is a real beat up.
Well, I mean, if you tip the right people each week.
Oh, is that how it works?
Yeah, that is a little bit how it works. But yeah, I mean, last week I managed to get 8 out of 9. I think I only didn't tip the Collingwood-St Kilda matchup was a bit awkward, but I think this week will be a little bit more challenging with some of the matchups against guys like Greater Western Sydney and Port Adelaide.
Yeah.
Those will be some tough matches.
Collingwood got me last week, but I also went for a couple of 50-50s that went the wrong way. I went for GWS and also the Bulldogs, who let me down. So you and I could have swapped had those results gone the other way, Scorfus.
Yeah, I mean, that Western Bulldogs-Hawthorn match was really close, and for a lot of that match I was thinking I made a mistake tipping Hawthorn, but yeah, just over the line I think it was... And of course the injury to Bob Murphy, how unfortunate was that? I mean... Oh, yeah. To see him go down, really, really sad for the competition because he's just one of those genuine good guys, unlike a Luke Hodge good guy. He was an actual good guy, but yeah. Hopefully we see him out on the park again if he can manage to get back. I mean, I think he's like 34 or something. He's getting on, so... Yeah,
33.
Yeah, it'll be tough for him, but hopefully he can get back. So normally this is where I would start talking about our SANFL team, but we have the bye, so I'll be just skip that section entirely. There's no point discussing it. It's a bit unfortunate that some of our guys pressing for selection like Cameron can't get a game, but oh well, that's how it is. So on to the other matches for the round. I think aside from our game, the game to look out for this week is Greater Western Sydney versus Port Adelaide in Canberra on Sunday, 1:10 p.m. Port Adelaide's brought back Hartlett and Wingard. Greater Western Sydney's got injuries to Hoskin Elliott and Devon Smith, so they've had to come out and they've bring in some other guys. Mr. Mystery Guest, who wins this match?
I'll say GWS. So I think it's closer than what most people on the board think it will be.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really close.
Yeah. I wonder if Port might get the sense that they're better than they think they're better than they actually are. And I think that might cost them a little bit. And especially early in the game. But yeah, I think it'll be really close.
Yeah, how about you, Phoenix? Who are you tipping?
Yeah, GWS for mine. I'd be surprised actually if Hartlett gets on the deck. I know they've named a squad. They haven't named any outs yet, have they?
No, that's right. Three ins and no outs at this stage.
Yeah, I think GWS in a tight one, probably running away with it at the end, about 4 goals.
Yeah, I think I'm tipping GWS as well, and I just think that it's pretty difficult for a team like Port Adelaide, which we're sort of expecting to be, not necessarily in the 8, but thereabouts. That it's difficult coming off one of those games where you're facing such a poor opposition. You're coming off a game the previous week where we smashed Port. Then they're playing a really easy opposition, and then they're having to go into a really tough game against GWS in Canberra. I think that in the end will be maybe the difference between GWS and Port Adelaide winning. So yeah, I'm tipping GWS there. The other 2 games also on Sunday that I think are worth talking about. We've got Collingwood versus Melbourne at the MCG. Now, I probably wouldn't normally mention this because these 2 teams are pretty bad, but those 2 games, are games where there are 2 teams that are pretty poor facing each other. They can turn out to be sometimes pretty close. And Melbourne last week against North Melbourne was surprisingly good, and Collingwood surprisingly bad. So, Phoenix, how do you see this one playing out?
Well, on the surface, you'd probably go Melbourne, but looking at the changes, Collingwood have got a couple of nice ends, Treloar and Sidebottom coming in. Melbourne lose Burney, which I think is a big loss for them in the midfield. I'm leaning towards the Maggies, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a really close one. I think, like I said before, the form that Melbourne showed against North Melbourne was really good, but Bernie Vince out is huge for them. He's pretty much their best or second best mid, and some of those guys coming back for Collingwood are really solid. So I've tipped Collingwood, I think, in a close one. What about you, MMG?
Yeah, I was initially thinking Melbourne as well. But guys like Collingwood getting Sidebottom back and Vin's out for Melbourne probably tips a little bit back to Collingwood. So I agree.
Am I right in saying that it could very well be Mason Cox's first game as well? He's in the squad, isn't he, I think?
Yeah, he's named in the squad. So I guess for Collingwood at the moment, they've named 5 players in and 2 outs of Marley Williams and Maynard. I mean, he's listed last on the in, so I think it'll be pretty sure he's not going to play, just based on some of the other guys they've got coming in, like Tuvey, Varco, McCaffrey and Sidebottom are also listed as ins. I mean, they could pull a left field selection and bring him in if he's ready, and it'll be great for the game to see like this, American giant coming in and playing in the ruck. But I mean, unless they bring out one of their ruckmen, I'm not sure he'll be playing. But at least it's good to see that he was upgraded from the rookie list, and yeah, good on some of our international guys for being able to get into these positions where they're playing. The other game
interesting that he was included, if not for cover for a ruckman. So whether there's a problem with Grundy, who knows? Yeah,
I mean, it must be something like that. I don't think Grundy or who's their other guy they've got, Witts. I'm not sure whether he's in the team or not.
Witts.
But I don't think they've really been setting the world on fire by any stretch of the imagination at the moment, considering Collingwood's been smashed all over the place at the moment. So maybe they'll pull a left field selection, but we'll see when it comes to the final teams on Friday. The other game, again on Sunday, that I think is probably worth looking out for is North Melbourne versus Fremantle at Etihad Stadium. This is the twilight game. Fremantle's been pretty crap, to say the least. Very disappointing after last season. And North Melbourne, they've been pretty good. So whether Fremantle will be able to stop themselves from getting 0-4 in terms of their win-loss will be really interesting. But the fact that this is at Etihad Stadium, I think, will really tip everything in the favour of North Melbourne. How do you see this game, Mr. Mystery Guest?
Yeah, I think North pretty comfortably. Say 4 or 5 goals, if not more. I think Fremantle might be cooked.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. I mean, and Aaron Sandilands as an out from his, injury to his ribs area. I mean, that's huge for them.
You would think Goldstein to dominate.
Yeah, I mean, all Fremantle's other rucks are pretty mediocre. So Goldstein will have a field day there, and yeah, it's just I agree with you. I reckon they're cooked. How about you, Phoenix?
Well, this might be the difference on the tipping table, Scorpus, because I reckon North Melbourne, this is one of the games that you'd think that they should win, which is exactly the type of game they usually lose. Freo got to win one soon. They're not a bad team. Etihad, I think, might just favour them a little bit. And they brought in a couple. You're right, Sandlands comes out. Jono Griffin comes in. He'll do a decent job, I think. Matty Taberner up forward will give them a little bit more firepower. I don't mind him, actually. He's pretty raw, but good value. So I'm tipping Freo in a heartbreaker for the Kangaroos.
Oh, that's a interesting call there, going against the cooked Freo team. I think it was pretty obvious that I was going to tip North, so I'm hoping I can sneak a little bit further on the tipping ladder ahead of you, Phoenix, ahead of that decision there. But we'll see on the weekend. It could be a close one. Just a little section I want to include here right at the end on some of the interesting, I guess, or good value betting odds that you can get currently at Sportsbet. Not that I advocate people going out and betting a whole ton of money on AFL or anything, but there are some interesting...
Bet responsibly.
Definitely bet responsibly. There are some interesting odds, though, I think, that people could take advantage of. If you think Adelaide is going to win. They're currently $1.96, so slight underdogs at the moment against Sydney. And I think, well, I've actually placed a bet on them at $2.55 to win, 1-39. I'm not sure whether that'll get up. Gold Coast, they have an attractive line against Brisbane of minus 21.5. So there's the Q clash there. And I just reckon in Gold Coast current form that they're going to absolutely smash Brisbane. Do you see it the same way, Phoenix? Yeah.
Yeah, they'll spank them.
Yeah, so I think that line of 21.5, and the fire alarm in my house has just gone off, so that's interesting. I'll just keep powering through because I don't think it's coming through in the mic.
If you need to do something right now, Scorpus, like put out a fire or something.
No. Someone's just cooking. I think they just stuffed something up, and she's probably listening at the moment too.
Burnt some toast.
Yeah, I think she's cooking nachos or something, so I don't know what's going on. And
she's just going to spit in your nachos now, mate, after you've bagged her.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's probably going to be, annoyed that I'm talking about her live on the podcast. Anyway, back to the betting odds. GWS to win is currently $1.85. So again, it's a very close match on the betting if you think it's going to go either way. I think just a little interesting thing there. $6.40 on them to win by 40 plus if you think it's going to be a blowout. So interesting there. North's line is minus 26.5 against Freo. I think if you go against what Phoenix was saying, that could be interesting. And Melbourne to win, if you think they can get up $2.70. So that could also be interesting for your multi-bets. Are there any other interesting matches you guys want to talk about on the weekend?
Nah, the rest are pretty obvious, I think. West Coast will towel up Richmond. I think the Cats will do the same to the Bombers. And yeah, Saints are on the right path, but I think Hawthorn will get them pretty comfortably.
Yeah, and of course that final match of Carlton versus the Western Bulldogs, I could easily see the Bullies winning by 100 plus points on Saturday night. I don't know why anyone would watch that match over Adelaide-Sydney, but I guess that's probably even going to be the televised match in Victoria, unfortunately.
Probably. It will be interesting to see what the Bulldogs do in terms of their structure with Bob out. Whether they've got a like for like.
Yeah, who did they bring in? Jed Adcock?
Yeah, so, pretty solid experience-wise.
Yeah, but I mean, I still see them absolutely slaughtering Carlton. Carlton are hopeless, so...
Oh, yeah. They could play 15 on the ground and towel them up.
Yeah, it's just... Their run is unbelievable at the moment after that thriller last week, which was pretty crazy to watch. Fantastic match. All right, so I think that brings us to the end of the Crowcast Round 4 preview. You can follow us on all our social media feeds. We're on Twitter at BF Crowcast, Facebook BF Crowcast, and we're also on iTunes. We have been for the past week or so. You might find it a little bit difficult to find us, but if you can, give us a review, because that apparently really helps with ratings and everything. So if you have something to say, a bit of feedback, give us a review on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. And
best way to... Sorry, Scorpus. Best way to find us on iTunes is to search Crowcast, no spaces, and that'll get you to our show page. And yeah, chuck in a review, give us 5 stars, so we bump up a little bit in the search.
Yeah, I think if you don't give us 5 stars and you bump us down a little bit, we might have to boo you, like we're going to be booing Kurt Tippett on the weekend.
We'll be naming and shaming.
Yeah, definite name and shame. And if you leave a good review, maybe we'll mention it in the next podcast. So keep an eye out for that, any reviews that you guys send through. And of course, don't forget the Sunday review cast after the Sydney match on Saturday evening will be live, or at least Phoenix will probably be live at 7 p.m. Adelaide time. So don't forget to check back for that. So thanks everyone for listening. And yeah, we'll be back live next week, 7:30 p.m. Adelaide time on Thursday. See you next week.
Good on you guys. See you later.